Kamala Harris has raised historic amounts of campaign cash in the days since she jumped into the race. And her supporters in Silicon Valley and the tech world are on track to raise $100 million for her. One of the first to get on board was LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman. Joining me now, Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn. Reid, many people call you a Democratic mega donor. Others say you're a political mega donor. You've given to candidates on both sides of the aisle, but you've been giving to Democrats, definitely President Biden, for quite some time, and you were all in on his campaign. What is your take on this change? He's obviously stepping down, and the most likely Democratic nominee will be his VP, Kamala Harris.
Well, I think it's a great act of political sacrifice and commitment by President Biden. I think just like his speech, he likes being president. He's spent his year in public, his decades in public service, and has done a great job as president. But when he thinks about what is important for the country, he puts his country and its people ahead of himself. And I think that act of courage, bravery, and what will be historic legacy is, I think, amazing. And I think for Vice President Harris, I think she is an awesome candidate. I think we now have, kind of what I think a lot of people have been looking for, which is a passing of the torch, as opposed to a debate between, kind of very old men. It's youthful optimism and the kind of next generation excitement about the future. And I think that's what we can look forward to. So I think it's an absolutely great thing. And I'm very glad we are where we are today.
Donald Trump likes to claim he is the pro-business candidate. But yesterday, there was a call with a number of big Democratic donors who are very excited about the prospect of Kamala Harris with the message to her campaign, how can we help? And what I heard over and over was this idea that for the business class, for the wealthy, Donald Trump might be a short-term win for them, for people like you, but he's a long-term disaster for the country. Do you agree with that sentiment?
I do. I think that people kind of overly think that what's good for business is just a near-term shift on like corporate taxes or regulation, which of course are important. They're not irrelevant issues to business. But what's much more important is a stable rule of law democracy with good international relations with our trading partners so that we can do business there, and that where we don't try to rule by tweet, we don't try to do tariff wars, we don't try to do other kinds of things as part of this, but rather, in fact, it's a kind of a stable society that we can invest in. And that's actually much more fundamental for business. I think also with Vice President Harris, we have that kind of where she, growing up through California, saw all the positives about entrepreneurship and technology and the ways that those can revolutionize and revitalize industries is, I think, really, really important. And so I think actually, in maybe paradoxical to some folks, I think the Democratic ticket is the more pro-business ticket in this election.
Then why do you think the likes of Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, someone you know very well, and others have gone all in Donald Trump? Is it about his policies, or is it about their access to the Oval Office?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily speak for them personally. I think they can speak for themselves in various ways. But I do think there's a lot of folks who are throwing in for Trump. A lot of business folks are throwing in for Trump because it's a combination of the fact that they can buy access to the Oval Office. I think, President Trump's very statements kind of give that panache to it. But also they fear retaliation. Because, basically Trump has made no bones about being willing to use his podium to threaten retaliation to anyone who opposes him, including, the various instruments of state, which is obviously something that's very deeply anti-American. And the separation of our kind of business lives from our political lives is one of the things that I think is really key for American democracy.
How concerned are you when it comes to the next president about things like regulation of artificial intelligence, which will change almost every aspect of the way we live?
So I think it's really important to recognize that artificial intelligence is one of the things that we can possibly use to revitalize everything from a manufacturing industry in the U.S. to making a much more broad cornucopia of pharmaceuticals that could help solve critical health issues and also, by the way, strengthen American pharmaceutical industry and all the rest. So I think it's really, really great. I think that the exact things that actually Vice President Harris together with President Biden have done, which is first getting volunteer commitments, then doing an executive order, then trying to shape it so that you essentially have the positive benefits while maintaining safety is exactly the right thing. So it's a balanced approach with an innovation forward future together with regulation to avoid negative outcomes.
Then does it give you pause or concern that someone who has such a vested interest in the future of AI, like Elon Musk, would now have such close ties to a Donald Trump, who, as you said, is totally transactional?
Well, I think the good thing about Elon is that he actually cares about humanism and humanity. I think the bad thing is kind of more of a messiah complex, which is, it's a little bit of the autocratic impulse. So that I alone should be in control of all of this. And I think that's the balance. On one hand, I think Elon is one of the entrepreneurial heroes of our times. On the other hand, it's the only good AI is the one that he builds. And so obviously his getting even more closely associated with the Trump presidency could have some negative outcomes here.
Who do you think Kamala Harris needs on the ticket as a VP? All sorts of names are being thrown around right now. Andy Beshear, Wes Moore, Josh Shapiro, Mark Kelly, Tim Walz. There's a whole lineup. Gretchen Whitmer.
Well, I think part of the thing that makes me a desired board member is I don't tell CEOs who they should hire. It's kind of like I work with them and collaborate, and I have not had any conversations with Kamala Harris directly about this. I think what's amazing is that there is a deep bench, and part of that deep bench not only is the various great governors that you've named, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro, Wes Moore, et cetera. I think that what's been great about the Biden White House is there's even high quality people that you could pick from within it. Gina Raimondo, Pete Buttigieg. I think that it shows the talent bench. It's one of the things where you kind of say, well, actually, in fact, Trump couldn't really pick anyone from his former White House because it was such a train wreck. Then that shows the differences in talent and talent bench, because it takes a team, not just an individual, to really govern something as large and as complex as the country.
So he couldn't or didn't pick someone from his last administration. What do you think of his pick, J.D. Vance?
Well, I think J.D. Vance has gone from, calling Trump a would-be Hitler and everything else to now trying to be more Trump than Trump in his declaration. People say, well, he's particularly good at his venture capital investing and other kinds of things. I haven't seen any evidence of that. There was nothing relevant in anything that I saw. And so I, basically think of him as an author and as a media personality. And I think that's part of what your question is here between the Republican ticket here, which is, we're really good about, tweeting and making, kind of various social media things versus real governing. For example, Biden has, lowest unemployment rate in the last 50 years, lowest, kind of crime rate in the last 50 years, most bipartisan legislation. I think we want unity versus chaos, and Twitter is chaos and unity is good governing.
I don't know. Maybe people want to say LinkedIn is better.